What was it like to be in solitary confinement?
It might be the most difficult part of prison, to be in solitary confinement. You know, in the Quran, Allah says that one of the punishments for sinners is to contract their graves, to make their graves smaller. When you're in solitary confinement, you just see the walls approaching each other and they're becoming smaller. And it's as if you're in a grave. It was just, and you start to hallucinate after a while because of, you know, you cannot do anything.
When you're in prison and you think that you might get executed, and this guard is constantly, this interrogator is constantly saying that to you, it's such a rare experience to be that close to death. What is going on in your head? Actually,
after a few weeks that when he threatened me with executions, I thought that, you know, so what? I can be executed and that's the end of it. And sometimes I thought, you know, it's better than being in a solitary confinement for I don't know how long. Because some people, they had to spend their, you know, 3-4 years in solitary confinement in the Islamic Republic. And I contemplated committing suicide twice. I had my glasses, the same glasses, in jail. And a couple of times I just looked at these glasses and I thought, well, I can always break the lens and I just can cut my wrist. And I was just thinking that how long it's going to take to bleed to death. How long it's going to take to bleed to death. And I started to think about it, and then I just thought that, you know, no, I'm not going to do that. Why should I do their job for them? If they want to kill me, they can do it themselves. I'm not going to be their executioner for myself. And, you know, I had so much to lose. I have my family, of course. I have my wife, I have my child, and I have my mother, my family, my friends. And it's just, but they are masters of psychological torture. They know exactly what to do.
So Maziar, the last phase of your imprisonment, about 20 days before you're released, something begins to seem to change, you said.
After, yes, 20 days before my release, I started to get treated better. There was no beating 20 days prior to my release. And then 11 days before my release, they put me in a communal cell with 4 reformist leaders.
And at this point, do you have any inkling that you're going to be released? No, it just seems like they're treating you better.
It was, I mean, when 20 days before my release, my interrogator started to talk to me about the possibility of my release. But he was coming up with all these different excuses to stop it. He was saying that, no, you didn't mention any names, so we cannot release you. You were this close to freedom, but we cannot release you now. And then he would come back another day and say that, we may release you tomorrow if you sign this or that document. And I just gave up. I would sign anything, you know, that they would give me. And towards
do you break at the end, after a while, no matter how strong your resolve is? After a while, you just are you willing to do anything?
I was willing to do anything. I was willing to talk about all their nonsense about velvet revolutions, Western imperialism, evil foreign media, as long as I didn't have to mention any names or mention the names of individuals. That was my red line, that I didn't want to ruin anyone's life with my words.
The day you are released, what happens?
I did not know that I was going to be released maybe half an hour before my release. They kept on delaying. We had given them my house deed to be put against my bail, and then they told me that they were going to release me at 12 o'clock noon time, and my interrogator came at around 12:30 and said that, no, it's not going to happen. We cannot release you. There are some problems. And then he came back at 1:30, he said 2 o'clock, and it kept on going like that until 8:30 p.m. And finally at 8:54 I was released and I went home. And of course, I didn't know what to do. It was just so unreal that But I knew exactly what to do. I knew that next morning I had to get my ticket and get out of Iran and never go back until the Islamic Republic is in power, which I don't know how long it's going to be, but that was what I knew.
But the first thing you did was, of course, you saw your mother.
I saw my mother, I saw the rest of my family, and yes, that was a very emotional moment, of course, to be reunited with them.
And your mother is 84.
My mother is 84, and the saddest moment that I had when I left Iran was when I said goodbye to my mother, because I used to be able to go to Iran much more often to see her primarily, but I cannot do that anymore, so it was very sad.
So this is, in a sense, the end of a certain journey for you. You will not go back to Iran again for a long time.
Otherwise, there are 11 charges against me. 11 outlandish charges against me, and they're going to set a court date for me, I don't know, within the next 2 months or so. And they may sentence me to 15 years imprisonment to life sentence. Because of those charges, I talked to several lawyers, and they said that with these charges, you can be sentenced to between 15 years to life imprisonment. And I really don't want to risk it and go back and see what's going to happen.
So let's talk about some of the broader issues. Who were the people who took you? Because there's a story in and of itself here. Who were these people? What was their age? And what part of the government did they come from?
I didn't know who arrested me until 107 days into my imprisonment. When I went to the communal cell, other people told me that we were arrested by the Revolutionary Guards. Of course, Revolutionary Guards, they are an army that was created in the beginning of the revolution as an alternative to the Iranian army, because the Islamic government really could not trust the Iranian army. And then the Revolutionary Guards, they evolved into this giant monster.
A military ruling elite of the country that now has its tentacles spread widely throughout the country.
Exactly.
And many of these people are young?
Many of them are between 40 to 50 years old. They are a new generation of the guards. Many of them are corrupt, but some of them are very clean, but at the same time they're ideological and extremist. And they're very powerful. They have arms and they have money and they have political influence.
So, in a way, this is the big story of what's happened to Iran in the last 10 years. The power has shifted from the mullahs to the Revolutionary Guard that has become more and more extreme and radical.
Yes, basically Iran has become a military dictatorship and not a clerical regime anymore. It has become more like, let's say, the Chilean, the Pinochet dictatorship, or it's going to become more similar to North Korea and some of the Middle Eastern dictatorships than what was supposed to be the Islamic Republic, or what the Islamic Republic was maybe 5 years ago.
And this was one of the reasons also where some of your friends in government were not able to help you, because it turns out that while they were in government, they had no influence over this increasingly powerful Revolutionary Guard.
Actually, many of my friends in the Iranian government tell me that one of the reasons that the Revolutionary Guards arrested me was to show the other parts of the Iranian government that we can do whatever we want and you cannot do anything. We can imprison Maziar Bahari, who you respect as a journalist, and you will not be able to help him. And I think a lot of people learn that lesson. But the Revolutionary Guard's power is on the rise. They are becoming more powerful. One of the reasons that they released me finally was because of the internal pressure. But I don't think that in 2 or 3 years' time, when they have consolidated their power, they would release people like me. They would just keep us in jail as long as they want.
What does this mean for the opposition movement in Iran?
Unfortunately, the opposition movement in Iran, we cannot really talk about an opposition movement in Iran, because what they call the Green Movement in Iran right now is just a collection of different groups coming together against the government. Some of them are monarchists, some of them are communists, some of them are terrorists. The majority, of course, they wanted a peaceful reform in the government. But since the government crackdown, which is started in June, people are just questioning themselves, what should be the next step? At the moment, most of